So we have some news on Geno Smith's contract. He is not going to be cut today. That never made any sense, was never likely to happen. The terms of his contract was that if he was still on the roster 5 days after the Super Bowl, a section of his salary, $12.7 million, would be secure for him. And Schefter's reported that the Seahawks are going to guarantee that to him, and he isn't going to be cut. It means that there's no restructure, which I personally think if there was a restructure, then he would have very likely been on the roster next season. It would have been very indicative that they intend to start Geno Smith in 2024. What this really means is that the door is open for another month. And I have to say, and a lot of people aren't going to like this. A lot of people are going to dismiss this. They're going to say that it doesn't mean anything. It does mean something. We have been here so many times. How many times in this fan base do we have to say, where there's smoke, there is usually fire? Look at what Adam Schefter said in his tweets. I'm going to read it to you. So this was a quote tweet, the second tweet that Schefter sent. Now, he did not have to include this. He could have just left his initial report, which was the Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith, who was $12.7 million in his contract that becomes fully guaranteed on Friday, was informed today that he will remain on the roster this week, allowing that money to trigger, sources tell ESPN. He could have left it at that and not said anything. But he quote tweeted his own tweet and added, the Seahawks believe that in today's market, with salaries soaring for starting quarterbacks, the right decision was to pay the money per sources. Now, Geno Smith will represent a value to them or any other team that decides to reach out to see if it can acquire Smith via trade. But Seattle has now locked in Smith, and Smith has locked in his $12.7 million. How can you not read into that tweet? That if that is not a tweet saying, give the Seahawks a call, that they are open to talking about a trade for Geno Smith, I don't know what is. There was absolutely no reason for Adam Schefter to quote tweet his own tweet and just chuck that out there into the world. He could easily have just reported that they're not going to cut him today and that they haven't restructured his contract. That is out there for a reason. And if you notice in that tweet, he says the Seahawks believed that and then explains what the Seahawks believed and then ends that sentence with per sources. So he's reporting from the perspective of the Seahawks. So again, like people people are going to dismiss this because people dismissed it when Adam Schefter tweeted out Russell Wilson doesn't want to be traded, but here are the 4 teams per his agent Mark Rodgers that he would be interested to go into. People went, yeah, forget that. He isn't going anywhere. I mean, come on. That was an obvious report that made it clear that a trade was on the horizon either that year or the following year. And so it happened. That is a tweet that is telling you there is a chance that he's going to be traded in the next month. Now, my personal view on this is that everything that they've said there is fair enough, that there is some value into Geno Smith. I think that if the Seahawks do not get an offer, which they believe is fair for his services, what I mean by that is if the Steelers turn around and go, whoa, we'll give you a 6th rounder, I don't think the Seahawks are going to trade him. I think they will keep hold of him. And then if he is the starter next year, fine. And if he is beaten out by Drew Lock, who they continue to talk up, I'll finish with a bit of that in a moment, or a rookie who they draft, then they'll just live with it. They'll live with the prospect of Smith not winning a job and being a backup on a lot of money, and maybe they trade him down the line anyway if that happens. So we'll see. And then maybe like a 6-7 rounder would be worthwhile then. But right now, I think if nobody sort of comes forward with a decent offer, they will keep him. But I think if someone like, say, the Steelers, who've got a great defense, who can run the ball, have shown that they can be fundamentally quite good across the board, but have just been let down by their quarterback position time and time again. If they were to, say, offer a 4th rounder, then I think the Seahawks would be interested and would talk with them. And perhaps they'd be willing to take on a bit of the bonus money, which is due on March the 18th, which is the new key date that we have to keep an eye on here. Perhaps they would be prepared to take on a bit of that to get a higher draft pick, which is what they did with Leonard Williams. So that is the situation as I see it, which means that really we just have to wait now. I think it's the combine. That's essentially when free agency starts, isn't it? It's the combine. That's when all the talks happen. That's when the teams are all in the same place. The GMs are all in the same bars at night. That's when they're It's when the Russell Wilson trade was essentially finalized. That's when business deals get done. That's when we're going to find out a little bit more about this. If nothing happens between now and March 18th, Geno Smith will be a Seahawk next year until he either, well, unless he loses his job long way down the line and then just try and save some money. I don't know what that would be later in the year. It might not be much at all. It might not even be feasible. They might have to sit on it. But I think unless there is some kind of trade between now and March 18th, he's going to be on the team. But I do think that tweet from Schefter should be ignored at your peril. As I'll say again, there was absolutely no reason whatsoever for Adam Schefter to quote tweet his own tweet and chuck out into the world the prospect of his great value for the Seahawks or anybody else who might want to trade for him. You've got to read into that. I mean, if you're not reading into that, then I think that you are, to coin the famous phrase that Seahawks Twitter loves to use, confirming your priors. Everything is on the table. Staying or being dealt. And we should just embrace that is the likely prospect, that everything remains on the table until March the 18th. So let's wait and see what happens at the Combine. The one thing I will add at the end of this shorter video is, once again, somebody who is prominent within the Seahawks has name-dropped Drew Lock without any sort of nudging and nerdling in that direction in response to a question about Geno Smith. Mike McDonald's done that. Now Ryan Grubb's done that. He was asked about Geno Smith. He said some positive things about Geno Smith, and then he brought Drew Lock's name. Drew Lock isn't even contracted next year. And everybody, Schneider, McDonald, Grubb, talks about him. We talk about reading into things. How can you not read into that? They keep bringing him up. And it's one of the things we discussed with Jeff yesterday. I think John Schneider really likes Drew Lock. And whether you want to refer to that as a blind spot for Drew Lock, you could definitely make that argument. I've not seen anything that makes me think he's going to be any kind of an answer. But then this is the GM who, brilliantly analyzed Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but also traded a lot for Charlie Whitehurst. So he genuinely seems to really like Drew Lock, and he seems to have genuinely sort of pushed that onto Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb, who are both talking up Drew Lock as well. I think Drew Lock's a big part of this. Whether that is to be legit competition to, like, all these people going, Geno Smith. Even if Geno Smith's on the roster next year, the way that they're talking up Drew Lock makes me think Drew Lock has a great chance to win this job, whatever the salary is. And that's one of the reasons why I keep thinking they're maybe just going to move on from Geno Smith, because they're talking up Drew Lock so much. Do they really believe that Geno Smith, with $31.2 million cap hit on the bench with Drew Lock starting, is feasible? Or do they want to go with Drew Lock and put a rookie with him and have them compete? Or a cheaper veteran? I think there's a lot to monitor here. I think anybody who thinks that this is straightforward, done deal, is kidding themselves. This is going to be an interesting month. March 18th is the day that a $9.6 million roster bonus is due to Geno Smith. That is the deadline for whether he is definitely going to be on this roster or not. That is the deadline for a trade. So by March 17th, the day before, we will have an answer, possibly sooner, as teams talk at the Combine, and we'll see what is going to happen with Geno Smith. But I think it's interesting. And I'd say it for a third time, that Schefter tweet talking about trades there doesn't mean the Seahawks aren't going to trade Geno Smith. Certainly means, in my opinion, they're going to be open to calls on Geno and having conversations about Geno, and that remains a distinct possibility. That has been my prediction all along. And I think Pittsburgh and Atlanta are the two teams to watch. That he could be traded. Don't think they'll get much in return unless they're willing to eat some of that bonus, but that might help turn a fifth into a fourth or a fourth into a third. That's what I would think. So let's see how it goes. Let me know what you think about it in the comments section. Like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. Until next time, bye for now.